all aboard for your chance to win $1,000 every week until December 28th. That's right, $1,000 cash just in time for the holidays. To hop on board, just head to churchillmortgage.com and punch your ticket to the Churchill Express giveaway. Visit churchillmortgage.com for your chance to win big.
This is a paid advertisement. NMLS ID 1591. NMLSConsumerAccess.org. Equal housing lender. 1749 Mallory Lane, Suite 100, Brentwood, Tennessee 37027.
As the chief buffet officer here at Pizza Ranch, I get all kinds of questions from guests. Here's one from Emma.
So, what's your favorite number?
That's easy, Emma. My favorite number is 14,839,552. With Buffet Your Way, you can order any pizza you want and we'll bake it and make sure you get the first slice. And with all our crusts, sauces, and toppings, we can make you 14,839,552 different pizzas. Just not, all at the same time.
Pizza Ranch, everyone's favorite buffet.
Welcome, friends, it's the MovieFilm Podcast. MovieFilm Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about the movies. MovieFilm Podcast on the radio.
Welcome to a movie film commentary track. I am Zachy Hassan. I'm here with Brian Hall.
Hey, how's it going, Zachy?
Brian, have you ever been afraid to go back in the water?
I was about to say something to that effect, too. Just when you thought it was safe to go back to the podcast.
We are here to talk through Jaws 2, which was, for a time, the most successful sequel ever made.
For a very long time, almost 2 decades.
Actually, for a very brief time.
Oh, sorry. Yes. No, I was mixing facts. This was in the top 10 box office.
Yes, that's accurate.
Of all time for like into the 90s, which I was kind of shocked.
That's correct. However, It was the most successful sequel of all time until about a year later when Rocky 2 came out.
Yep. Which was then usurped by Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, and then at that after that we stopped counting.
Yes,
basically.
Yeah, movie box office had changed forever,
quite drastically in the interim. But yeah, so this year is the it's the 45th anniversary of Jaws 2.
45.
Ponder that, Brian.
Drink that in.
What were you doing when Jaws 2 came out, Brian?
I was just
summer of 1978. What were you up to?
I was just a twinkle in my daddy's eye.
There you go. You were just a concept. In Search of Completion. Yeah. So this is a movie that predates us, and it's an interesting film for me, certainly, because I have long said I think it's entirely fine. I think that Jaws 2 has the misfortune of being the sequel to Jaws, but I think working more against it is it has the greater misfortune of being the prequel to Jaws 3 and 4.
Yeah. It almost feels like a shift in direction. Like this is a pivot. This is the pivot.
Like if there was just Jaws 1 and 2, you would have this really great DVD 2-pack sitting on most people's shelves.
You're totally right. Yeah.
So this was one when I suggested to you for a commentary. I was like, I think we could have a really fun conversation about it. So hopefully I'm right.
I think so. I mean, this is one this is only the second time I've ever watched it. So it's still kind of newish to me. So it was kind of fun to go back and not remember hardly anything and collect my thoughts.
I was worried that me trying to convince you to watch this I was gonna be like Martin Brody trying to talk to the city hall. That was my worry.
Yeah, we get on a ferry in one unbroken shot and talk like the mayor. And
no, that's one movie ago, Brian.
I know, but you know what? I'm bringing it over. It's too strong.
It's too strong.
I don't know what to reference from this one.
Well, we're going to have a fun discussion. So if you want to watch along with us, please take this opportunity to get your copy of Jaws 2 queued up. I know y'all got a copy of Jaws 2. But if not, hey, we'll try to keep the conversation interesting and lively. But while you queue up, let's take a short break and let our sponsors do their thing, and we will be back right after this.
All aboard for your chance to win $1,000 every week until December 28th. That's right, $1,000 cash just in time for the holidays. To hop on board, just head to churchillmortgage.com and punch your ticket to the Churchill Express giveaway. Visit churchillmortgage.com for your chance to win big.
This is a paid advertisement. NMLS ID 1591. NMLSconsumeraccess.org. Equal housing lender. 1749 Mallory Lane, Suite 100, Brentwood, Tennessee 37027.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. It's a thing. And now the truth is out there. I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free anytime, anywhere. And each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
And we're back and ready to go. Brian, you queued up?
I'm ready to rock.
Okay, so we are watching the one and only cut of Jaws 2, and we will hit play on 3. So 1, 2, 3, play. And here we go. 1, 2, 3. Play.
All right. Well, I guess we should note I'm starting a version that has it begins with the old school Universal logo, and yours has both, right? Yours has the new one and the old one.
That's right. So I queued it up just before the classic logo. Yeah.
Yeah. Fade up, underwater.
So this was a film. Now it's worth remembering that at the time Jaws 2 was made, the idea of doing a sequel without Steven Spielberg was not, blasphemous.
Right. Because what had he done? He'd done The Duel, the TV movie, he'd done Sugarland Express, and then Jaws was this surprise, humongous hit, right?
Yeah, that's right.
He hadn't done Close Encounters yet. Or no, he had, right? If this is 78.
He begged off of Jaws 2 so he could do Close Encounters.
Yeah.
They offered him, they did ask him, and he felt, first of all, the first film was kind of a miserable experience for him.
Right.
But by the way, the number 2, that's the first time ever a movie sequel had the number 2 in the title.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. Yeah, not the Roman numeral. That's how I learned Roman numerals from the Rocky movies, much like Bart Simpson.
So they had asked Spielberg, and he kind of felt like, well, he'd made his statement with the first one, and again, that was not a deal breaker situation, because there was no reason to think that audiences wouldn't show up for a sequel regardless of who directed it, and they were in fact correct, because this was a massive hit when it came out.
Yeah, and he said in talking about the sequel, he said that the planned plot, I don't know if this was from him, if they wanted something from him, or it was pitched to him. But
by the way, here's our first ever Memba Berry in movies. Yeah. I feel like
it's exactly, yes.
Hey, remember the orca? Remember that boat you liked?
Well, speaking of, he said that the planned plot, when he was asked, was the sons of Quentin Brody hunting a new shark. So kind of
so it would have been set in like the 1990s or something, right?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. It's like they're Back to the Future 2, where we get like their idea of the future.
They have their jet packs that they use to outrace the sharks with freaking laser beams on their heads, probably.
Well, now I'm sad we didn't get that.
Now, Richard Zanuck and David Brown were the producers of the first film, and they were sort of dragooned into doing the second one. I think they were essentially told, like, look, there's going to be a sequel with or without you, and they were like, well, we don't. At the very least, we want to take ownership of our own thing, you know?
Right.
And it's kind of interesting because Jenno Swark, who directed this film, I think he does a good job, and I think it helps that he's working within a sort of a framework that is familiar, you know. So a comparison I make is like Superman 2, which is directed by Richard Lester, where it still is similar enough to what Dick Donner did with Superman the movie.
Yeah.
Where you kind of feel like you're in the same place. And we'll talk a little bit about what Zwark does, but you know, the original idea that I think William Sackler had the idea of doing like, oh, let's do the USS Indianapolis movie.
Yeah, right.
Like the prequel, right? Which I think they're still threatening, like now, by the way.
Yeah, that feels familiar. Like I heard that not long ago.
Joe Alves, by the way, would direct the third film, the production designer.
Oh.
But yeah, so I hope they don't do that. I think it's a terrible idea. But
yeah,
the studio and the producers said no. We think audiences will want to carry the Brody character forward.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in terms of this film, I think that was the correct choice. But I'm curious, what do you think about that decision to say no? We want to stay with Martin Brody and Amity, etc.
Oh, I think that's 100% the right direction.
Yeah.
You know, something that I thought was interesting was reading that there was another director who had shot footage for this first.
That's right.
But it started with the town of Amity being sort of like boarded up, you know, and suffering.
After the events of the first film.
I was like, that's like a nice natural continuation. So yeah, I think I would rather stay with the town. I think. I mean, you run the risk of getting repetitive, but
that's right.
I think I was kind of impressed with thinking about the script of this, where it isn't just repeating beats. Like, okay, like he gets another shark expert, and then they go out on a boat and they hunt it down. Like, it's not like they're playing the same beats. It's sort of like, as much as I can't say that I really care about these kids' characters, right. I think that's why I couldn't even really remember much about this movie, having seen it once. And it's because, and I remembered, I'm like, oh yeah, it's because these kids get trapped and I'm not really connected with them.
You know, but to that point, because I just popped this on the other day and it had been a little while, but I definitely remember this moment right here where Brody says right here. And I'm like, oh, it's them. Hey, look, it's them again.
Yeah. Life continues, you know, it's like, we're checking back in. And I thought that multiple times. I'm like, oh, they're not ticking the boxes. You know, they're doing a different story in the same place with the people we know. And I appreciate that.
Now that being said, the first Jaws is, to me, and I'm sure you would agree, it is a perfect movie.
Yes.
There is not a hair out of place. This is a film that does have at least a few plot points where you squint past it.
What do you mean?
You know, well, I think foremost among those is, in order to make this movie work, you have to believe that Amity is just full of the most dumb assholes who, like, Martin Brody killed your shark the last time, and he's like, there is a shark again, and they're doing the same freaking shit again.
That's pretty funny. That's a good point. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you have to buy, like, there's a moment later in the film where he kind of has, you know, this thing happens on the beach, and it's like the whole town turned against him. And I'm like, I don't know, man, maybe he gets one.
Right.
Maybe he gets to be wrong this one time and you don't just, you know.
Yeah.
But that being said, this film, the fact that it is, you know, in broad strokes, you know, it has a similar setup as the first film. One thing, I was talking about this with my oldest kid yesterday. I was like, Jaws, to me, it's like Die Hard, where you get one where you have the character essentially be like, how can the same shit happen to the same guy 2 years in a row? So this is that one.
That's that's hilarious. Yeah, Die Hard 2, where it's like,
yeah.
What's his line? He says something about that, like,
I think he literally says what I just said.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I got to say, going back to crediting the director and keeping sort of I don't know if I'd go so far as to say the visual language. Well, no, I will say the visual language.
I think so. Yeah.
It doesn't look like someone just plopped in and tried to shoot like another movie that just happens to be Jaws 2. I mean, there's still like some style to this. Like there's that really impressive shot where the band is playing and Brody's entering the whatever this area with the pool, and I was like, oh, that's wow. Like there's some vision to this, some scope and style, and I think that helps it not just feel like some monster shark flick from the 70s. Like it feels a little elevated in terms of its presentation.
Yeah, and that term elevated has sort of become like a bad word, when it comes to horror.
Sure.
But I mean,
pretentious, pretentious.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that I certainly, as it pertains to the first film, I've never considered it a horror film.
Sure. Yeah.
I consider it a thriller with some horror aspects to it, but I think this one slides more easily into that genre.
Yeah.
And you sort of right here, you're talking about the kids, like here's a bunch of kids. You're like, okay, well, which ones of these are going to get picked off? But that said, the one thought I did have is they do a decent enough job. I can't distinguish these kids. That guy on the right, by the way, tell me they didn't cast somebody who looks just like Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, I know. 100%.
Right? It feels like he just walked in and got the job based on that.
Right.
But I couldn't name these kids other than like Larry Jr. and Miss Amity, whatever her name is.
Yeah.
But here's my thought is I'm not actively rooting for any of them to die, and I consider that a good thing.
100%. And I think, like you said, when there's not a hair out of place with the first one, I think with this one, to its credit, I mean, you have John Williams back, which is amazing. And then we forgot I think it looks like it's shot like a quote unquote good movie. Right. But the thing that doesn't work, and I'm tracking with Brody, and I'm feeling for him as he's trying to convince everybody, of the danger out there. But I can't say that I care about all the characters. I just didn't connect with them like I do in the first one.
Right.
So
other than the Brodies,
yeah, even his kids, and so their misadventures at the end, I think, are thrilling enough, but it's not enough for me to like love this one.
Well, I think what you're saying is actually quite relevant in that the films after this tried to be like, okay, now the further adventures of Martin Brody's kids, and nobody gave a crap.
Right. See, I've never even seen 3 and 4.
Yeah, I mean, you're fine. You're fine.
Wait, so what happens? So the kids from this, I know one involves like a theme park or something, right?
Yeah. So the third one is it's a SeaWorld type place, and Michael Brody is played by Dennis Quaid.
Ah, okay.
And the shark, a shark shows up there, and shenanigans ensue. And then the fourth one, I believe, ignores the third one.
Oh, okay.
And that has Sean Brody is killed by a shark, and Michael in that one is played by Lance Guest from The Last Starfighter. And it's terrible. I mean, all the stories about it. You're not missing anything. And it really, you talk about like ruining a legacy.
Right.
It's kind of remarkable because I believe the fourth one has a 0% rating on Rotten Tomatoes.
Ah, wow. And that's not even the 3D one.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think I haven't seen the fourth one the whole way through, but I have seen the third one. The third one is bad, but based on what people say about the fourth one, I think the third one feels like Brian, the Magnificent Ambersons compared to it.
Well, that's where that legendary quote from Michael Caine comes from, right? Where he's just like, they're like, "Why'd you do Jaws 4?" And he's like, "I've never seen it, and from all accounts, it's a terrible movie, but the house I bought with it is quite lovely."
Yeah, he's like, "I've seen the house that it bought me."
Yeah. Paraphrasing, but that's kind of the famous thing that I remember about Jaws 4.
Now, what's interesting is Jenno Zwark, who stepped in after John Hancock. Who I think it was John Hancock. I think that's the...
Yeah, I think that's right.
After he tapped out. Swark again, he came at it as like he stepped in late in the game, but he's like they basically came to him, the producers. They're like, what would you do? He's like, here's what I would do with Jaws 2 based on the script that they had, and they hired him almost immediately. And I think a lot of his instincts in terms of how to depict the action sequences and stuff were pretty spot on. Actually, I think the action sequences are some of the best parts of this movie.
I agree. I think it's. I think the shark is handled really well in this.
Yes, yeah. I was thinking that it's very interesting because obviously, so much of what made the first movie work was just the necessity of, well, the shark's not working, and so we have to work around it. And then that sort of created this mystique of like, oh, you can't show the shark. And Zork was like, well, we've seen the shark already. Like, we know, like, you can't replicate that again.
Yep.
So all you can do is really like lean into it and find new ways of depicting it, which I think he does well.
I think so too. He doesn't go over the top with it. And it's, you see it enough. I love, like, at one point it gets kind of a scar from an early accident, which really is distinguishing. Yeah. And so when you see that, you're, I don't know, there's just something sort of visceral about that connects you with it. Like, oh, this thing is a hunting machine and it's been hurt and it's dangerous and it's angry, Right. But there's still some clever sort of stuff where you're seeing from its point of view. It doesn't go overboard, I don't feel, with it jumping out of the water and doing all sorts of crazy shenanigans, which actually they probably couldn't have pulled off. But
yeah, and the other thing is the movie, again, it does feel of a piece with the first one, where we're not sort of ascribing sort of supernatural powers or supernatural intent. I mean, it's just a shark. And I think that's smart. And that's where, going back to what I was saying earlier, it's like, I think you get one sequel. The premise of the first film allows for potentially one. And then after that, you kind of have to be like, okay, pencils down, collect your winnings, like, see the cashier, because that's the problem. It doesn't allow for a franchise that just stretches into the sunset, which obviously the studio figured out too late.
Right.
I was, we were talking about Psycho 2 earlier in this week, and I do find it amusing that, there was a when Psycho 2 was announced, you had filmmakers, including Jenno Swark, who was like, man, why would you make a sequel to Psycho? And this was after he had made Jaws 2, right? And I was like, that's what's funny to me, is like that tells you where this movie existed in time, where the idea of a Spielberg-less Jaws was not,
like sacred.
Yeah,
yeah, you're treading on hallowed ground. It's just like, hey, it's this popular movie. Let's make another one.
Let's make it. Why not?
Yeah. Apparently, wasn't there some other business between Hancock and the Suits, where I guess they wanted Ellen Brody to be a bigger character because Lorraine Gary was dating Sid Sheinberg. The Universal.
Yeah, I mean, or she was married to him at the time.
Oh yeah. And
in Hancock's version, Ellen Brody's role was lessened,
right?
And that was something that they wanted to bump up. The other thing is there was a storyline in the novel, right, about the mob, about Larry Vaughn, the mayor, being tied in with the mob and stuff, and they resurrected that for the movie, for the sequel. And again, I think Hancock's idea of a darker movie, like nowadays, we're like, well, a darker sequel, that's a darker number 2. That's what you do.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Right. But that's us. That's our post Empire Strikes Back brain.
Yeah. I guess this, by the way, what we're looking at here, where this guy's, I don't know, parasailing. I don't know what you call it, but that's his Hancock's footage.
Yeah, there's a few bits and pieces of Hancock's that made it in.
Yeah,
but a lot of his casting was redone. It's interesting because Zwark was much more about preserving sort of the general ethos of Spielberg more than Hancock wanted to do. I think Hancock wanted to sort of shake up the Etch-a-Sketch a little bit. I mean, even in terms of bringing in the actor who plays the deputy, Hendricks.
Right.
Because as originally written, he wasn't in it. He's in the first one. and he was like, well, why don't we bring him back, right? And I don't know about you, but I'm like, yeah, no, I liked him in the first one.
Yeah, same. I mean, he just brings makes the world seem that much more real, right? Where you have these
familiar
people,
yeah. This whole idea of the kids on Amity sort of having like, it's like hot rod culture, but with boats.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of clever.
I think so too. And, I actually wondered, I was like, oh, is this what it's like? Sort of like a Dawson's Creek kind of thing where it's like these kids who live there just all have boats. Like, it's just so far from anything I know. It's just kind of, we all go out on our boats and we kind of sail beside one another. Whether that's real or not, I don't know, but it works for this movie. It makes sense and gets them out on the water. And
it feels like a contrivance for the film, but I buy it within the world that they've created.
Yeah, same. Now this is kind of from the poster, right? This woman water skiing.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. I was thinking, have you ever been water skiing?
I have not. Although I went to tubing once, and I was miserable for all 20 seconds of it.
No, I've not done it myself, but I've watched people do it who are very good on the water and seen how difficult it is. And so I was kind of admiring this woman here. Like, it's one thing to be good at it.
Champion water skier.
Oh, well, there it is. I was gonna say, because she looks so confident, and to like have to do this on film too. You know what I mean? Like, get it right.
That's right.
Hit the marks and all that. I was really impressed.
So Tina over there, played by Ann Dusenberry, she obviously, this is probably the most prominent role she ever had. She did continue acting somewhat, but I found it interesting. She's married to composer Brad Fiedel, he of the Terminator score.
Wow, that is, yeah, huh? Just one of those things you can't make up.
Yeah, right.
That's really impressive, isn't it? The choreography here, like the staging of or the blocking of the shot is what I'm trying to say. Like where you have her on the water skis, and then from the side angle, especially, and then the shark fin rising in the foreground in frame. I mean, that just feels hard
to pull off. Yeah, and I my understanding is a lot of these shots sort of obviously relied on a lot of timing and sometimes just good luck, almost by accident. You ended up with some really memorable shots. Now that said, one thing that bugs me is that we never see the tail fin of the shark. We only see the dorsal fin.
That's funny.
And I'm like, well, they have like if it's a shark, like you're going to see both,
You know what? Never in my life has that crossed my mind. And like, that's just one of those things where movies, it's like movies. It just looks cooler to see one.
That is true.
Oh boy. Oh.
Here we go again.
Love the handle skedaddling across the water empty.
Yeah. So now this woman right here, we're about to see possibly one of the dumbest people in any horror movie ever.
I think when I first watched this, this did sort of color my take for the rest of the movie, where I was like, oh, so this Jaws 1, it ain't. I was a little, went easier on it the second time. Kind of appreciated it for what it was.
So the woman who was driving the boat that the water skier was on, she's like, hey, what's going on? And then the shark comes back for seconds.
Yes.
And her reaction is somewhat befuddling. And I was thinking about it. I was like, I have to imagine that something got like lost between conception and execution.
Yeah.
Right. Because we're about to see it where she's freaking out about the shark. And then naturally her reaction is, oh, let me pick up this gas tank and pour it on top of me.
It's just, like you said, execution. I think the execution is not great because, yes, it's like she's getting hysterical, understandably, but then she picks up this gas can to throw it at it. I don't know, but it's leaking gas all over herself. And then she immediately picks up a flare gun And then in a comical, overblown explosion, just like I think we were saying before we got on mic, where it feels like a Family Guy moment of like,
yes,
hysterical person like accidentally douses himself in gasoline and blows himself up. Like it just feels.
That old lady, by the way, I was hoping she'd be like a Mrs. Deagle character. And
yes, damn kids.
And she'd have some ironic comeuppance by the shark, you know.
Right. Serves them right.
Yeah,
like skiing in front of my property.
That's right.
But nope. She's quite sweet.
Yeah, I know.
This is Deagle, by the way. We should say the woman from Gremlins.
Oh yeah. I was hoping that the shark would like its fin would bat her automatic wheelchair, and then she'd ramp into the ocean or something.
By the way, that was one of the things I went on the Warner Brothers tour several months ago, and they show you that house. I was like, wow, that's where she flew out the window.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah.
Well, cool. The town, Kingston Falls, which is also used for Hill Valley.
Mm-hmm.
That's also, Brian, that's the town in Psycho 2.
Yeah, I noticed that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So Roy Scheider, we got to mention, we talked right past. Roy Scheider did not want to be in this movie. And I should say the late great Roy Scheider. One consistent thing I've seen about Roy Scheider's career is how often he did not want to be part of the thing that he was in.
Wait, elaborate on that. What else? I don't know if I know all this.
Something. Well, he was cast in The Deer Hunter,
right?
And he didn't want to be in it. It was having disagreements with Michael Cimino, so he was replaced by Robert De Niro, who my understanding is did all right.
Yeah, right.
But him walking off Deer Hunter was actually what ended up landing him in Jaws 2. Although, again, the script, it was developed with the intention of carrying the Brody characters forward. But essentially, Universal was like, look, you owe us a movie, so you're going to do this. Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But, years later, he starred on the television series Sequest for 2 seasons.
Yeah.
And he was pretty much miserable the whole time until finally, he's like, no, I don't want to do this. And so I'm like, Roy Scheider walked off of just as many things as he stayed on,
Huh. That's so interesting. I wonder what his principles were.
Well, I think when it came to Jaws, I would have to imagine, again, it was not a pleasant experience. The other thing is he probably had a little bit of like Chuck Heston, Planet of the Apes feeling. Like, we've already told the story.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So, right. And because remember, Heston had the clout to, when it came to the second one, be like, all right, well, I'll just do the beginning and end as a favor to you. Right.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, here's Chekhov's power cable.
Yes.
Wonder if that's going to have some significance later.
It's so random, because they're dragging the ocean, I guess. And then they accidentally hook this power cable. And I remember I've seen this movie before. I did not remember how this movie ended. But I was like, I know that. How's that going to come up? How's that going to come into play later?
Like, it's so funny.
Yeah.
So Scheider, again, contractually, he's sort of forced to do the movie. So he already doesn't want to be there. And then I think the other factor was he just did not get along with the director.
Yeah, I was reading about this. Like, really, a lot of blow-ups, a lot of fights.
Yeah, and it's interesting because after the film came out, his work was very complimentary of Scheider. He's like, we got into it, but he ultimately gave a really great performance. And I think he said that having the film be a success under his belt, right? So it's kind of like, well, all's well that ends well.
Mm-hmm.
But Scheider, I don't think he ever came around on this movie. I don't think he ever enjoyed having been a part of it. And certainly he was sort of bemused at, where the series ended up going. But my point with all of that is, notwithstanding the personal issues and whatever, you can't watch this movie and tell me Scheider did not want to be there.
No, he feels like the same character from the first movie.
Yeah. I mean, he really, it's consistent, and he's there to act,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's not phoning it in. And I think Brody gets stuff to do in this that feels like a natural progression from where we left off. I was thinking about that. I was like, there's a scene later where he has to sort of go into the water to retrieve something. And I was thinking about how, because he's not afraid of going into the water anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we haven't wound the clock back, is my point, you know?
Yeah. And there's also a scene where he gets a little hysterical at the beach, and I was like, this is a good scene. This is a great idea.
I agree.
Or the scene too. Well, we'll get to it, but where
this here, by the way, that the killer whale there, that's a little nod to the movie Orca,
right?
Which that movie that was a Dino De Laurentiis hack job trying to cash in on Jaws, because of course that's what Dino De Laurentiis did. But that movie starts with the killer whale killing a great white shark.
That's so funny.
So this is sort of like the war between the Jesus fish and the Darwin fish that was played out on the bumpers of America during the 90s.
That is so funny. Right. And so then here we got an orca with killed by shark bites.
Yeah, if they had made Orca 2, that would have started with the killer whale shooting a machine gun at a shark.
Yeah.
And Jaws 3 would have had a rocket launcher. We just kept going back and forth.
Right. And you know what? Now that you're saying it, I wish we had.
Give me a shark versus killer whale team, like a Godzilla versus Kong type movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's make that happen.
You know what was sort of bothering me during this? Not really, but when they were measuring it, and he takes it to the tip of the nose, but he's like not doing the length. He's kind of like winding it over it, which is adding extra inches to it. I was like, I don't know how you would and I stopped listening and started thinking about how you would accurately measure this tip to tip. So stupid.
This here, where he's talking to her about, the fact that he thinks it's a shark, and again, I kind of like that it's a progression of what he's learned from Hooper.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know about you, but she says Carcharodon and Carcharias, and I'm like, hey, I know that phrase.
Right. Yep.
Now Richard Dreyfuss was originally supposed to, or rather, I should say, his character was supposed to come back as conceived. Hooper would have returned. Dreyfuss, of course, went on to he was making Close Encounters, so he was unavailable. And I was thinking about that. I was like, while rewatching, I was like, obviously, I would have liked to see Hooper back.
Mm-hmm.
But on the pluses and minuses of not having Hooper, I think it helps distinguish this movie. Number one,
mm-hmm.
And number two, it kind of puts the onus more on Brody.
Mm-hmm.
To solve the problem. And I so it kind of like when we look at it, like, yeah, I mean, obviously we like Hooper. We'd like to see him back, but I don't think the movie suffers for his absence.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think everything with Brody is pretty good. Like, yeah, like his progression and what he's learned and his like, you understand why he is understandably like really, really freaking out, because he's had a face-to-face encounter with this thing. He knows what it's capable of. And so you can see why he'd get so concerned later. Like, I think all his stuff, I think, is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think the other stuff is fine too. I just don't connect with it in a way that I wonder if Spielberg had done it and executed it and casted it, that I might feel a little more connected with all of it. But
I think that is the problem, right? Because the first film, by virtue of it being Brody's story,
yeah,
the arc is woven through him. So by virtue of, here's Alex Kintner, he dies, that spurs Brody into action, blah, 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 blah. It's, the culmination where it's, the third act is just the three of them on the water. I mean, I think that works because we're invested in all three of those characters.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, yeah, to your point, the movie throughout is like cutting away to be like, hey, and here's like this douchebag, and here's Jerry Curl, and here's,
yeah, right.
And it's like, again, I just to be clear, like I'm not rooting for any of them to die.
No.
But yeah, I can't tell you their names,
Yeah. There's something that someone like Spielberg, or not just him, but a good filmmaker would like really made us identify with at least one of them.
Yeah.
And I don't really track with any of them. But to your point, though, when you go watch certain movies and you're like, hey, well, I'm here to watch 5 teenagers get killed. You know what I mean? Like that's the point of this horror film. But like with this one, later one of them does get eaten at the end, and I was like, oh, not her. Like I felt really bad.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's to the movie's credit that we're never rooting for anyone to get eaten. Right? Like it doesn't turn into like kids just being fodder that we're rooting for the shark. Like I was always rooting for the kids to escape it.
Exactly. And I think that's really crucial, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is more of a horror movie than the first film, but by the standards of the types of horror movies that were being made at the time, it is pretty tame. I mean,
yeah, this is the same year as Halloween, right? 78?
Halloween was 79, I think, right? Was it 78?
I'm not sure.
It's thereabouts for sure.
Yeah.
It is 78. You're right. Yeah.
So you get the whole slasher thing,
and Halloween, really got that ball rolling.
Yeah, I was gonna say. It wasn't the first, but that's where I think it really kind of kicked off.
Yeah. See this scene here. I think it's interesting because I think so. So we have Brody trying to convince Mayor Vaughn again. About like, hey, there might be a shark. And I'm like, yeah, but he's been like, they've both been through this.
Uh-huh.
Right. And so to me, I think Murray Hamilton does something interesting where he feels like much more of a broken man in this one.
Mm-hmm.
He's sort of beaten down. And I wonder how much of that is, Murray Hamilton at the time they were filming the movie, he was dealing with sort of, personal issues because his wife was sick. And
yeah, I saw that. That's really sad.
It really sad. Yeah. And so we see some of that in his performance, but I'm like, why not make Mayor Vaughn Brody's ally?
I was just going to pitch that to you because you have the council, and that's fine if the council doesn't quite get it. But like, it feels like it would be interesting if he was conflicted. Brody is 100% on this side. The council is 100% on the other side. And you put him in the middle. Like, no, I know. I was there, like, and what does he do? Maybe he had to get trimmed down because of the things, he couldn't be there for long. I don't know.
It's possible. Well, there's definitely stuff of his that got left out, and I'll talk about that when we get there. But in the first film, it's that really great moment, remember, where after the Kintner attack,
mm-hmm.
where Larry's like, Martin, my kid was out there,
Yeah, and he's got that. He's trying to light that cigarette, and he's at the hospital.
Yeah, it's a terrific moment. It's a Spielberg oneer,
Yep.
And to me, I'm like, well, you're not the same guy after that moment, and so it's kind of frustrating that they kind of just put him back in that role. And it's like a famous meme, right? Like the mayor in Jaws is the same mayor in Jaws 2. Vote in your local elections, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Like, right. And it's unfortunate because I think there was an opportunity there to make his character a little bit more nuanced.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's that scene you were talking about where
I was like, he's not so much hesitant about going back in the water. He's trying to catch the thing. And I was like, again, because he used to be afraid of the water. He's not anymore.
Yeah. I was kind of relating to what I feel like his body language is doing, which is, I don't really want to get all wet.
Yeah.
But yeah, he doesn't, I don't see fear.
Right.
He's just
now after this, he'll be afraid to go back in the water. Now, this moment right here.
Right.
This is a pretty good jump scare, actually. I've seen the movie and I forgot about this.
Me too. Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? Just like a wave just dropping that on top of you?
No, that'll haunt
charred, you. Crispy critter. Yeah.
That'll haunt you. It'd be kind of funny though, is if like the coroner was examining her and he's like, well, I think what happened was she saw the shark, irrationally grabbed a gas can, poured it all over her head and blew herself up. Like, wow, he's the best. This coroner. I love this though. I love this is like, I've seen this monster. I know what it's capable of, and now I'm going to go to the extreme here to prevent this from happening again. And I love that he's a little private about it. He covers it up, right? He doesn't want the other guy to see it, and the other guy's like, "What did you just cover up in there?" Like, I think this is all great.
Yeah.
This is good stuff. And it feels different. That's what I'm saying about being a sequel. Like this feels, we're continuing the story. I don't remember a scene quite like this in the original. Like it's good original stuff.
It's, I mean, that's the dilemma with sequels in general, which is that balancing act of how much do we repeat, how much do we mix it up, and what combination of those ingredients do audiences want? And there's no one size fits all.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, for example, you look at something like Ghostbusters 2, which, you've commented, like, I mean, it's repeating so many of the beats from the first film.
And it does that thing too, where people sort of turn on them. And I was confused because I was like, don't you remember when you were cheering for them like 2 years ago because they saved the city? Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah, and there's some of that here.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to point out for people who real quick, for people who aren't watching along, what I'm talking about is we see Brody after he knows like what's happened. There's a shark. He takes these hollow tip bullets and he's putting poison in them. And he's going to like, there's no way this thing's getting away from me.
I like the little bit about, the very opening scene set up that camera, and that's sort of like we as the audience are like, come on, develop the film. Like,
Yep. That'll make your case.
Yeah, come on. Now, Jenno Zwark, before directing Jaws, he had directed episodes of Night Gallery. And he went on to do Somewhere in Time, the Christopher Reeve, Jane Seymour romance.
Which I've never seen.
It is beloved by many, but I am not among those many.
Okay.
I don't. He also did Supergirl in 1984.
Which I have not seen.
Which is beloved by nobody. Including me. And he also did Santa Claus the movie in 1985.
That's again, I have not seen, so I am not a connoisseur of him, but that is a total video store. Like I've seen that box so many times, right? Like, I don't know why that one always like stood out to me, Santa Claus, the movie, but I never saw it.
Yeah. At this point, he's a very prolific television director.
Mm-hmm.
So even up to now, I mean, he Criminal Minds and Grey's Anatomy, and he's still working. I know he did several Smallville episodes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So he at least found a groove there. But I mean, certainly at the time, I mean, he got to claim credit for the most successful sequel of all time, which that was a short-lived record, admittedly. But hey, put stick it in your hat or whatever whatever the metaphor is.
Yeah, I was kind of I wouldn't say laughing, but just sort of noticing the video game that they're playing. Like, just this past week, Spider-Man 2 came out on PlayStation, and I can find where my wife's family's apartment is. That that game is so detailed in New York. Like you can literally find like places, the streets make sense. It's insane, the scope of that game. And then you're looking at the kids playing the game there where it's just like 4 squares bouncing around the screen. And you're like, at the time that was like, this is the most fun I've ever had.
That is so funny. And that's just what it was, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And it probably was fun.
I was telling my class about Atari games.
Yeah.
And I might as well have been, just like a man from Pluto. The way it was just, I was like, yeah, you had like this square and that square, and there's like a little square you try to get in between those other big squares, and that was a game. I'm like, the hell?
Yeah. That's so funny. When I was watching this, I was like that water ski or not the water ski, the like jet ski or whatever that guy's on. I was like, when was the jet ski invented? Like it looks like sort of an early version of it. And it turns out that I guess the first time it was like a prototype of the jet ski was first used on screen in The Spy Who Loved Me a year later or earlier.
Wow. Okay, so it was like brand new.
It was like brand new. Yeah. So like the prototype for that thing was in a year earlier in the James Bond film.
Just a year earlier. Yeah. That, I remember it in The Spy Who Loved Me. I didn't realize that was a prototype for it though.
Yeah.
So the
summer job.
The character that Ellen Brody works for, who's played by Joe Mascolo, he's kind of meant to be like a romantic rival for her.
That's fine. I did not pick up on that at all.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I think that's kind of a problem. Yeah, because there's sort of this element of like Brody being jealous of him.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some stuff cut out where like Brody gives him a ticket even though he didn't really need to and stuff like that.
Mm.
And I think the problem there is you don't like Ellen Brody is very clearly devoted to Martin, right? And so that subplot doesn't make sense. If you have that subplot, one of them has to look bad then.
Yep.
Either Martin or Ellen.
Yeah.
You know?
And I realize you want to give her some business, but like I like that they're a unit.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I like later on where, it's the two of them together that go on the water and, they find, after the shark attack later,
Mm-hmm.
See, this whole thing where Brody is up there, he's not doing anything. He's just up there keeping an eye out.
Exactly.
And the way these guys are shitting their pants over it.
I was just about to bring this up and I was like, maybe I even missed something, but I was like, yeah, he's just in a lookout tower, just keeping an eye on things, kind of his job, like, and
right?
Everyone is like,
they're like, that bastard.
Yeah. Like, yeah,
I told him,
like, what will people think? I'm like, I don't know. I don't think I'd think anything. Yeah. It's very funny. Like if he had like some sort of harpoon that he was like squinting through a scope and pointing it at the ocean, like maybe I'd feel like he looked like a crazy person.
Right. See, again, like that to me is like a fundamental flaw in the story construction where, again, you're not talking about a shark attack like 50 years ago. It was 3 years ago, that Alex Kintner was eaten alive. It's not that long ago.
And this is an opportunity to have the mayor sort of like in an awkward place between, the two camps. It's like, well, he's not hurting anybody and just let him do the thing. It's like, and then the other guy could be like, it's not a good look, mayor.
Yeah.
Like that would be some good business.
Yeah. And I think, the Joseph Mascolo character, if you have him representing a power that sort of outranks Mayor Vaughn or, where he's powerless to stop that,
Yep. Yeah, I think that would have been good. But I like this scene.
I agree. Yeah. No, I was going to say, I think it's a nice juxtaposition of, what we're sort of, the Alex Kintner scene in the first one, that's what we're used to. And so you think this is going to be something in that vein.
Yep. And you can appreciate how he feels. I mean, we've seeing this shark shaped shadow in the water. We know what he's been through. And then, but he goes, I don't know if I want to call it too well, I guess he does go too far because he starts before actually seeing anything. He like fires his weapon.
That's right.
But you understand where he's coming from, and you also feel the embarrassment, like of how he's being perceived by these people who don't quite know what's going on, aren't in his head. And I feel like this is a great moment for this character.
And the panic he's evincing is real, but since there isn't any context of a shark attack specifically that people are aware of, it's just the crazy guy shooting at the water.
Yeah, I mean, and that shot is pretty good there, where we see the weapon pointed at the ocean, but there's still a person in frame. Like,
that's
like,
right.
Don't point your weapon. Yeah. Yeah,
it's
and then we get
bluefish. It's just bluefish, Brian.
I know that guy. Yeah. But it's like a sweet moment. You know, we have that moment in the first movie, very Spielberg. He likes people sort of mimicking other people's motions, right?
Yeah.
Where he's folding his hands, and you got the son folding his hands, and they mimic making faces at one another. And in this one, I don't feel like it's copying it. I feel like it's another sweet moment.
Oh, he picks up the casings.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that was a nice moment. I agree. It reminded me of that piece in the first film. I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Now look at the way that everybody's so mad. I wish there was like one kid who has like a Martin Brody doll, and they're just like so disappointed. They just like leave it on the ground and they just walk away. Like,
oh, I was just gonna say, is he loyal or is he disheartened? Like he's
disheartened. He's like, no, I believed in you.
Yeah, you were my hero, Brody. Now I don't believe in anything.
The girl right there who just glared at him. She throws away her Brody doll. Meanwhile, Ellen is going off to screw that guy.
And me, I guess, not being very observant, didn't pick up on the movie trying to make me feel that at all.
That's right. Yeah, this right here, right? And then his son comes. I mean, it is a nice moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you talking to Scheider showing up for this, even though he didn't want to be there too. I mean, look at the way he's so like embarrassed and still having to do his. And like,
but I love how he looks at his son. Like, I don't know, it's just a really nice moment.
Yeah, he needs it.
Sweet. That actor who plays Sean, by the way, Mark Gilpin. I just read that he just died like a few months ago as we're recording this.
Oh,
so
young.
He's like 53. You know.
Oh, that's sad. What does that say? Nah. Sort of plaque on his desk, but I had like a little smaller sort of Jaws preserved skeleton. Well, I wouldn't want to face my boss after this. After
it's awkward.
Firing
it's
a
awkward.
gun on a crowded beach. Yeah.
Yeah, they needed like the Amity Register or something like that newspaper, and it's like gun-toting madman, you know.
Yes.
It's like a picture of him like waving the gun around, you know.
Yeah, him putting that down on his desk, like,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But like I was saying though, I feel like the movie makes me believe that he would do that, but you can also appreciate how that would appear to everyone else, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
See, now I'm curious, like, what is your history with this film, Jaws 2? Because I mean, you probably saw the first one like when you were a kid, right?
Yeah, my grandpa showed it to me when I think it was like early junior high. I was visiting and there's some cousins over and, you know, the adults are all together. And he was like, I think he had taped it off of TV and was like, here, you'll enjoy this.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did, and
he just left you alone as your
yeah. But that was the first time I saw it, and I remember like enjoying it, but it wasn't one of those movies I went back to a lot. I think I revisited it in like early college-ish.
Okay. Once you became a bona fide film nerd.
Yes. Yeah, kind of, you know, like knowing that this was like one of those hallowed movies. And so I was like, oh, I should watch that again. And I think I did see it through a different lens, you know, the way that I was beginning to watch movies. How about yourself?
Yeah, they showed the first two movies on television in Saudi Arabia when I was living there. And by chance, I happened to be out of town when they showed the first one, but I was there when they showed the second one. So I actually saw the second one first.
Ah, okay.
And you know, I saw it and I thought it was fine. And it must have been just edited to within an inch of its life, because I don't know how you would have had like all the kissing and the bikinis and stuff on Saudi TV. I just, in hindsight, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, it was probably like 37 minutes long, you know? But I thought it was fine, and I didn't end up watching Jaws until later, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I only say that because, like, you know, I probably in the DVD era. Now that I think about it, I watched 1 and 2 together, and I revisited 2 not with like, oh, it was such a great movie. Like I had an affinity for it from when I was a kid. It wasn't like that. But I watched it, I was like, no, this is good. Like the second one. And I felt confident in that, where I've said what I said earlier. Like, I think if it was just 1 and 2 and nothing else, then you'd have this, like, even now, what's thought of as a pretty good, 2-pack, or like a digital bundle on Vudu or whatever of just Jaws 1 and 2.
I think you're so right, because I think I was sort of tainted with that with all the sequels. Just thinking, oh, well, there's one classic and the rest are just these cash grabs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, kind of what we were saying about Psycho 2. I think if it was just Psycho 2, you'd have, 2 well-regarded movies, Not as good. The first one is still better, but no, it's a pretty decent one,
Yeah, yeah. They found some interesting things to mine, to continue mining. And
yeah, exactly. And I think it's unfortunate that they really did sort of pee in the pool with the third and fourth ones, where now the notion. I mean, when you think about it, Marty's reaction in Back to the Future 2 is a reflection of what those sequels were thought of as, right? And
yes, right. I forgot. I was.
The shark still looks fake. Well, the shark doesn't look fake in this one. It looks pretty good
that's the joke, right? Jaws 19.
Exactly.
Like they never stop. They will never stop making those.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
This real quick. Murray Hamilton. He had his wife had like a health scare, so he ended up being like, he told the producers like, look, I gotta go. Right. Yeah. And they very generously were like, well, will you let us shoot all of your remaining stuff in the next 2 days? And they pulled everybody back, and they were able to do that. And I'm glad they did that. But I do wonder, like, did his character have more to do later in the movie? Because he's like, this is the last time we see Mayor Vaughn in this film. Right.
Right.
And, this is one of the frustrations I have. There is a deleted part of this sequence where they show the vote, and they show that Mayor Vaughn is the only one who sides with Brody.
Oh, I love that.
Right.
That's sort of speaking to what I was talking about earlier. I mean, it was there. I kind of can't believe that they didn't keep that. That feels really important.
Yeah, I don't know why they cut it out, because I can't imagine it would have impacted the pacing that much, but it would have added this dimensionality to Mayor Vaughn,
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, he died not too long after this movie came out, maybe 5-6 years later. Murray Hamilton, I mean.
Yeah. He's so good. Just the looks he's given Brody in there, sitting.
Yeah.
Even his sort of sullen, like, hey, it's a private meeting. It's just so good.
Yeah, I mean, there is like a sadness there. And I feel like it would have been beneficial to show that, well, Vaughn and Brody kind of went through this thing together, and they are joined by that experience. But the movie doesn't delve too much into that, unfortunately.
Yeah, I would have loved just at least having that one deleted scene that you were talking about. I think would have, like you said, dimensionality. I mean, it just would have added that much more to it.
I do think it's interesting that, his son, Larry Jr., is one of the characters. And I did appreciate that they didn't make his son like, my dad's the mayor.
Yeah, that's a good point. That feels very 80s, I guess, maybe
like set him up as a douchebag and have him get killed by the shark. I actually appreciate that they steered away from that.
You know what? Whoever was making films in the 80s probably saw this and was like, you know what? The only sour note in this movie, they should have had his son be this douchebag. Yeah. No, but I agree. I like that too. Just feels too, I don't know, cliche.
I mean, he's the only kid I can think of by name, right? Really, other than, Tina or whatever. But like, I do feel like there was an opportunity to have some kind of relationship between Larry Jr. and Michael Brody.
Yeah.
Just as a way of like just adding some character texture,
I think, that goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like, there's nothing for me to latch on to with these kids. So like if you give them some sort of like at least one or two of them some sort of hook, then I think the whole peril of the last act would hit a little harder.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the little bit here about Jeff, the deputy, like being like, look, I don't want your job.
Yeah. Yeah, how loyal he is to him. And it's funny because then later at the end, when he's taking over the boat and he's just yelling at the deputy, like, I was like, hey, man, this guy's like kind of your pal. Like,
he thinks you're the greatest, Chief. Come on.
Yeah, you're talking to him like some sort of, I don't know. We'll do it together.
Subordinate.
Yeah. Drunk Brody.
Now, you know, we were talking about how Dreyfuss didn't do this one because he was off making Close Encounters. You know, that kind of reminds me of how you know, Roy Scheider is in the French Connection, the first one, but he's not in the second one because he was off making Jaws.
Oh, funny.
So it's just like franchise musical chairs, you know?
Yeah. But it's like you're glad that all those exist.
Yeah. Well, French Connection 2, I was actually thinking as like, that's a good example of like, you know, it's like a sequel that I think is generally thought of as pretty okay, right? And they stopped there. I think that kind of helps.
You know, I don't know if I've seen 2.
French Connection, you've seen the first one, right?
Yeah.
French Connection 2 is like, it is like textbook. It's okay. Like, I don't think you need it. John Frankenheimer directed it.
Yeah.
And if you liked Gene Hackman as Popeye Doyle, here's another Popeye Doyle. You know, but they didn't like Dirty Harry that bitch. You know what I mean? They didn't just...
Right.
You know, it's just like, no, it's just these two movies. And I think it's totally fine, you know?
Yeah. I like, by the way, this picture that he has as evidence that he got from the camera at the beginning of the movie. I like that it's clearly to him and to us, we're like, oh, yep, that's a shark. But it's obscure enough that if you think you're talking to someone who's hysterical,
that's right.
Like, look, man, I
don't know what I'm looking at.
Yeah, this is not enough. This is not enough for me. I think I like that.
I think it'd be funnier if it was like a crystal clear, like iPhone 14. Obviously, it's a perfectly framed shot of a shark.
Yeah.
From you know, stem to stern, all contained within the frame, and they're like, I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah, right.
I don't know. What am I looking at? It's like, what are you, crazy?
I would love that.
Well, you know, after this, you know, Zanuck and Brown, they wanted to do Jaws 3 People 0.
Yeah, which was going to be like an airplane type comedy, right?
That's right. They were like, at this point, there's nothing but parody, so why not like own that too?
You know, what do you think about that? I mean, obviously you don't want to like stain the ones that came before it by just poking fun at them.
Yeah.
But like maybe there's something to that, right? It's like, look, there's nowhere else to go here but to laugh. So like, why not? Like,
Airplane was what, 1980?
I think that one, the first one was in the 70s.
Airplane was not in the 70s. That was an 80s movie.
The first one?
Yeah.
I'm fairly certain it was in the 70s. There's a sequel that was early 80s.
The sequel was like 84.
Let's see.
Airplane.
Oh, 80. You're right.
Okay, yeah. Okay. That sounds right. So my thought is Zanuck and Brown probably saw the success of Airplane.
Yeah.
And based on that, we're like, why don't we do this? And they were basically told by the studio, you know, don't shit where you eat kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
And I think, well, objectively, they were proven right in that there was nowhere else to go.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you know, 3 and 4 are essentially unintentional parodies.
Yeah, right.
So what's to lose? And maybe that's just me with, whatever 40 plus years of hindsight looking at it. But I mean, don't you think like, well, why not? What the hell? Like,
yeah, I mean, that's how I feel. But I also understand that you don't want to like damage the integrity of, like, if you start parroting specific things from the first ones, then you may run the risk of people never looking at those movies the same way.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's kind of a good point.
I don't know. I can see it both ways, honestly.
Yeah.
I can see the wisdom in it. I can see why it could be a good idea, at least. But I don't know if it's worth it.
Well, at least they made 2 more after this. That's all I have to say.
Yeah. But it's funny that you say though. Then they became accidental comedies. So
yeah, I mean, that's pretty much right. Like it's neither of the latter films even touch. Forget the first one; they don't even touch this one.
I know,
and that's kind of like, man, talk about just immolating your brand, right?
Yeah, I know. Wait, now who is the woman or girl, I guess, who is taking the younger brother? I don't remember her from the start of the movie.
She's like, yeah, no, she's the one. She's one of them, honestly. Like, I know who she is, but I couldn't pick these characters out of a lineup. Yeah,
I couldn't either. I mean, except for this kid kind of looks like Napoleon Dynamite and like,
yeah, and Napoleon over here earlier in the movie is like, hey, I want to ask out that girl, or whatever, and we're supposed to care even a little bit.
I know none of this stuff works.
Yeah,
their interplay, but yeah, I was confused because she struck me, the person who takes the younger brother on her boat. She struck me as a little older than all of them. I don't know why. Like, she just came across as more mature, and so I was like, wait, is she with them, or is she just another person who's taking a boat out and they know her? Like, I was kind of confused, and she's so sweet that she's going to take the brother out by herself, and like not go out with her friends. I was confused.
Well, in that vein, Brian, I did like that, Michael's sort of like forced to take Sean, but it's not like, hey, why'd you bring your dumb brother? And
yeah,
like, they look after him, which I actually really liked.
Yeah. I wonder, I don't know if they even put this much thought into it, but like sort of small town, it's like, well, yeah, we all know each other, like
everybody knows everyone. Plus, he's the chief's son, so you probably don't want.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
But yeah, this is what I remembered most when we were going to revisit this. Just that the third act revolved around these kids being trapped on the water, and I just didn't connect with it.
Yeah, I think that's, like we were talking about earlier. I mean, with the first film, by this point in the first film, where it's the quest now. It's the three amigos. And that's the fun of it is seeing these 3 men get bonded together on this experience, and
who couldn't be more different.
Exactly,
but
right?
bond. And, Yep.
I mean, it's really meaningful when they're singing, they're doing their sing along, and then when Quint has his monologue about the Indianapolis and stuff, and that makes it matter when Quint dies, and I think in this film, it is a little bit like, you have to imagine that the writers are like, all right, who can we kill off?
Sure, yeah.
Right. And I'm sure some of the thinking was like, well, we don't want to kill off that person because we like them. And so you're left with like, okay, well, I guess it's, pick the kid. Right.
Yeah. Or the woman who Brian doesn't understand, but, and she, and she was the one I was like really upset over. I was like, no, she's so nice.
Right. That's right.
I was so sad. Yeah.
I mean, you wonder if they would have considered killing off Brody in this.
Well, I was gonna say, when you were talking about who to pick off, I mean, you don't want to do one of his kids. That feels a little too close to home or something. But yeah, him saving his kids, I could see a version of that.
I mean, given what the films ended up retroactively doing to his character, which is just friggin' bullshit and it pisses me off.
Wait, what?
They're like, like in between movies, Brody died of a heart attack because he was terrified of another shark coming. I'm like, okay, so just like undermine everything that was accomplished in the first 2 movies then.
Dude, that is ridiculous. ridiculous. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's one thing to have him die, but to like, oh, he died because he was scared of another shark. Dude, screw you. Like,
yeah. I mean, seriously, and by the way, like I'm not somebody who like a bad sequel will ruin a previous movie for me. I know some people are like that. I'm just like, well, I just ignore it. It doesn't exist in my dojo. And it's not like I need to watch Jaws: The Revenge in order to get my complete Jaws experience, but definitely. Yeah. Like, okay. Roy Scheider's 100% out. There's like a million different ways to write out his character without, again, actively undermining what the first two movies are explicitly about, which is him overcoming his fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't know, how many times can you put up with a town that gives you so much crap? Like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you don't want him abandoning people that could use his help, but you find something a little more heroic, but.
Well, I mean, in the context of at least the third film, I mean, it's, Ellen Brody. Oh, and that's the other thing, right? Because suddenly Lorraine Gary's the main character. There's a problem right there. And it's like her, she's forming a relationship with Michael Caine's character, and nobody wants to see that, like.
Right.
So all these real baffling choices. And it's very funny because earlier in the film, remember when Brody is talking to that woman who was sent to sort of look at the damage to the orca, the killer whale, I mean. And he's like, well, I've heard that, sharks, maybe they communicate telepathically, and, maybe this one was called by what happened before, and she says, sharks don't take things personally, Mr. Brody. Right? And in other words, the movie is itself dispelling that, but they actually follow through on that in the fourth one by saying, oh, somehow the Jaws family has like a grudge against the Brody family. This is like the Hatfields and the McCoys.
Yeah, they have like a dartboard with Brody's picture on it, Yeah. And like
it is stupid,
Yeah.
Now, in the novelization of this movie, which was based more on the earlier draft, the Hancock version, they say that the shark is a female and it's the mate of the one from the earlier film.
Oh, that's interesting. Wait, so it's based on an earlier version than what we got?
The novelization is based on an earlier draft. So yeah, that includes the idea of Amity being kind of, a town on the outs, and I believe it does include the mafia subplot and all that.
Oh wow.
And I have no idea how good of a novelization. It's not by Benchley, I know that. But I think that aspect of like, oh, and it's the mate, and I don't think you need that, honestly. No. I think the first movie buys you the license of somehow another shark ended up here.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
It happened once, it can happen again. Again, you do the same thing a third time, you got a problem, but you get two.
That must be weird for Benchley, right? You have this big bestseller.
Yeah.
And it gets turned into a movie, and then like a sequel comes out, and then someone's like, I'm going to write the sequel to your book. Like, oh, okay.
That is weird. Yeah.
Right.
Because like David Morrell, who wrote First Blood, he did all the novelizations for the sequels.
Did he sort of like Game of Thrones, like did he continue what he wanted, or did he then just go, all right, well, that's what the movie is, and I'll transcribe that to novel form?
Yeah, no. So because in First Blood, he killed off Rambo at the end of the book, right? And so he didn't do like a Michael Crichton. I don't know if you remember, like Michael Crichton in the Lost World novel. Because in the Jurassic Park novel, Ian Malcolm dies,
right?
And then in the Lost World, he's like, oh, actually, I didn't die because something. They kind of contrive a reason he's alive. I think David Morrell just treated his novelizations as sequels to the movie.
Okay.
And just went that way with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's always the dilemma, right? Like, what it's like, the movie is the more well-known thing. And so at that point, the original novelist sort of lets go of it,
Yeah.
That's got to be hard.
Yeah, that would be hard.
Yeah, so I just pulled up the novelization. It's the cover says based on the screenplay by Howard Sackler and Dorothy Tristan. Dorothy Tristan being the wife of John D. Hancock. And it says, inspired by Peter Benchley's Jaws. So at the very least, Benchley got some coin from that.
I was going to say, yeah, it's nice to get some royalties, I guess. Why not? Is that the, I don't know what parts of a ship, but the pole holding the sail, is that the thing? That's the boat that gets stuck, that keeps them from getting over to that island. I was noticing that the camera was like, look at this pole.
Oh, that I didn't pay attention to that, to be honest.
It looked to me now, having just watched this last night, it's sort of like foreshadowing, or not foreshadowing, but setting up, seeding, I suppose you could say.
Seeding, there you go.
Yeah.
So this actor, Gary Dubin, he could not swim.
Oh, no.
And so his terror, one imagines, is incredibly real.
It's funny. I noticed him last night. I was paying attention to him swimming, and I was thinking about actors. In a movie, it's like, all right, he swims over, thrashing through waves to a boat, but it's another thing in real life to be in the ocean, having to swim as scripted on camera. I was kind of impressed, like, oh, he looks like a good swimmer. So that's funny, specifically that guy that I was admiring his swimming right here. Yeah. Wow. That would be scary.
So he too, he passed away as well, 2016.
Oh my gosh.
Bone cancer. A lot of these, it's it feels like a disproportionate number of these kids, Yeah. The kids in this movie, I mean.
Yeah. That's good. I like the fin going below the water, like, oh boy. So yeah, you said it earlier. I mean, I keep harping on this. I don't mean to do that, but like where I just don't connect with these characters, but like the execution of all this stuff is pretty good. You said that earlier, but
yeah. Yeah, I think Zwark's approach to the shark stuff all works. It's kind of interesting. There's like a POV kind of thing where you're not from underwater, but like from above, where you see the shark heading towards the boat.
Yeah.
If it's not in this sequence, it's one of them. This here, and the way he got that shot, it's pretty crazy. They were like trying to come up with a rig or something like that. And then they basically, the model that they had with like the fin, the model shark, they basically got somebody to ride the shark model with us. They put a saddle on it.
Huh. And
they just pull the model along in the water. And so you have somebody with a handheld camera just going through. And I'm like, that's like pretty, old school, but it gets the job done,
I think it's some clever new visuals for this. I mean, you can only show a fin ominously so often, and yeah, I thought it was good.
Well, and that piece right there where Eddie, he's trying to get back in, and then he gets pulled back under, and he pulls the wood off.
Yeah,
like you talk about instant shorthand of like the force with which the shark is pulling him underwater.
Yeah, it's good stuff. She's really good too. I mean, I like the how they calibrated her fear and reaction to all this stuff. Like later we get into there's one character who is just like screaming. Like if I was Brody, I'd be like, please, you are not helping.
But like Tina's reaction to
Tina's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. Yeah. And actually, I want to, we were talking about Lorraine Gary, and I was kind of like poking fun at her being the lead in Jaws: The Revenge, and I still think that's stupid. But I think she is good in this movie, and I think we were talking about earlier, like the way she plays off of Scheider, like in this sequence, and was kind of, I think it's done well,
Yeah, I agree. They do feel like a couple that supports one another and loves one another, and I like that.
Yeah.
Yep. He knows what's up.
It's what's interesting also is that, Jaws comes out in 1975, and obviously it redefines what we think of as a successful movie. I mean, it invents the phrase blockbuster. 1977, Star Wars comes out, and that, my understanding is that one did okay. When Jaws 2 comes out, how is it perceived in a post-Star Wars world?
That is a really good question. I mean, it did well.
It did well, but is it like? But it did well with an asterisk, right? It cost twice as much to make, and it made half as much.
That's true. I mean, I think it had the biggest. It set a record for the biggest opening weekend.
Sure,
which is quaint. Now it was $9 million. $9 million. Worldwide, it did 187 million.
Five Nights at Freddy's made 30 million yesterday.
Alone. Yeah, exactly. No, but worldwide it did 187 million. 2. Jaws 1 worldwide did just about $500 million. So yes, quite a drop, but still a lot of people showed up.
Right. And bear in mind, I mean, the expectation during that era was that a sequel will always do less than the first one.
Sure.
And it's only in recent memory that has kind of changed. But at the time, this was not a flop. It again, objectively, it did very well. But yeah, I mean, it's sort of like you have something that is popular and then a new thing comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And then we revisit that older thing. Like, is it thought of as, that thing is it passé?
That's true. I mean, this is real world terror, right? And then you have Star Wars, which is fantastical and ships and lasers and everything. And then even Spielberg, he's shifting in that direction where it's like, yeah, we're on Earth, but what if the fantastical visits Earth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you look at the 80s, and the 80s is all about fantasy, even on, grounded, like Back to the Future, it takes place on planet Earth, but it's fantastical. And, E.T. is on Earth, but it's fantastical. I wonder, if like Star Wars then, well, I don't wonder. I mean, it's true. Like Star Wars did just put people's imaginations into overdrive about the fantastical. So yeah, I wonder if kids, I was thinking about with the whole third act with the kids here, if that was like a real calculated, like, this is what's going to get teens to for sure come see this movie if they see fellow teens battling a shark. And so it seems like it did well, but not as well as the first one. So yeah, I wonder if kids' imaginations had shifted to the stars.
Yeah. Yeah, because certainly the late 70s saw a rapid shift in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Post Star Wars, you get Superman and Black Hole, etc. But I mean, again, that whole, obviously that's like kind of generally, even though some of the stuff preceded us, that's the era in which we grew up. So that stuff feels more connected to me. Yeah. But like, it was all kind of brand new, right? Like we're talking about a year later, Rocky 2 comes out and it's just a mammoth hit.
Yeah.
So there was an appetite for those types of things,
Sure. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. So I'm like thinking in my mind, but I should be saying it out loud because this is a podcast. But I mean, actually, I want to hear your thought first.
I think that the thought I have is like Jaws should not have been the monster hit that it was. It just so happened to be this amazing alchemy. But if you objectively look at Jaws and you say that's going to be the number one movie of all time, I mean, that seems odd, don't you think?
Sure. Yeah.
Right. Now, see, I think her performance here, it's funny because some people mock it, but I actually think the way she's like, I think it works for me. I don't know.
No, I love this. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I really like her. It's the other, well, I guess this shark thing is could be kind of like funny, but, but no, her, she's like shaken. She's haunted. I like it. It's when people start getting shrieky later where I'm like,
at the end, you're like, all right, shut the hell up or I'm going to shove you in the water. And
yeah. Well, but she's doing her job. I'm sure she was asked to I was thinking about this last night. Like this actress was told to do this. She did it. But I think the director put a little too much of it or lingered on it a little too long. And it starts to get almost like comical where it's like that woman in Airplane where you want to shake her a little bit and be like, calm down.
That's right.
But Tina here, I think is doing, I like it. This hits for me. And this is funny too. I mean, this is where you leave your other characters like, all right, bye. Like, this is my movie now.
That's right.
Which I guess is kind of an argument, right? That they had, right? Scheinberg wanted her to go with.
Yeah, and thank goodness he lost that argument.
Yeah, I think just it makes sense economy wise.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're talking about differentiating it from the first one, making it Brody has to do this on his own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because you kind of wonder, like, what was Hooper's role in the initial, because they had to rewrite it without Hooper, and they kind of do the thing like, oh, Hooper is off on a boat somewhere or whatever.
Yeah.
But what's funny is we talked about this before. I remember when we did The Lost World, and how it focuses on Ian Malcolm, and I said that's the equivalent of doing Jaws 2 about Matt Hooper.
Mm-hmm.
And I said it then, I say it now. I would still watch that movie. Like if you were going to do a Jaws 3, that's the Jaws 3 you should have done.
Yeah, I agree. Different setting, character. We know he's been through something, and how do we see him react now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people would have turned up for that. So I think they really miscalculated the notion of like, oh, Roy Scheider's got, none of the actors are the same, but oh boy, them Brodies.
Mm-hmm.
Them Brody boys,
Yeah. I know this movie's 45 years old. Jaws is even older, but I'm still really impressed with the mechanical shark.
Yeah.
Just how they're able to, like, in real ocean water. I mean, how are they, some sort of rig below ground making it move the way it does? It just feels like a headache.
Yeah, and they were having a lot of the same issues because the shark, there were a couple different models, but the one, the robot shark that they built was built on the chassis of the one, the Bruce, from the first one, and kind of same issues, and yet despite that, I think that there's enough of a difference in the staging in some of these sequences. Actually, this thing here with Mike and how they're trying to get him out of the water, I really like that in terms of the tension.
Yeah.
Again, going back to what I was saying earlier, they avoid some of the tropes of like your Camp Crystal Lake type movies where the kids are just douchebags.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. I like that. Going back to what you're saying about the mayor's son too. It's like sometimes in a movie. Oh, we were talking about this with in the Line of Fire, where it's like you have those hunters,
yes,
who are set up to be killed. So you got to give them some sort of trait where you're like, I don't really like that guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I kind of appreciate that they didn't do that. There's something a little more, because then in that way we might be rooting to see. Well, we can let that kid get eaten.
Exactly,
but that's not what these movies are. It's like we don't want anyone to get eaten.
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about, right, like how much like Lee Fierro makes Mrs. Kintner feel like a real person.
Yeah.
Right, and we feel her grief. I mean, almost 50 years later, we still watch that sequence, and it makes your heart ache.
Yep.
And again, because it's just a little boy, he didn't ask for it, and so that sense of, if it tips over into wanting characters to become shark food, you sort of lose sight of what makes a story like this effective.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Marge, the one who's with Sean, that's the one who gets picked off later.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of interesting. I mean, it is antithetical, like you're saying, to like these Friday the 13th movies, where it's like the nicest person gets picked off. Like
yeah.
Like she didn't commit any sin, like she's not mean to anyone. And I didn't remember at all that she got eaten. And last night I was like really sad. Oh. I was like, no, not her.
Well, this whole bit here where they're trying to tie the tugs together and do all that. I mean, again, going back to what we were talking about earlier, right? Yeah, well, they got boat culture here. These are people who are familiar with the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
They know, and it's a unique way of ramping up the tension.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unique. It's unique. I mean, you got to give them that. Like that's what I'm saying. Like they didn't try to replicate set pieces, but change one component. Like this is a different movie, and I kind of appreciate that.
That is always the challenge, right? Like again, it's going back to what we were saying, right? Like Gremlins 2, which is my understanding is a pretty polarizing sequel. I never thought of it as a polarizing sequel because what I liked about it growing up was like, man, it's totally different.
Yeah.
When you think about it, like another Gremlins 2 in Kingston Falls, like, I mean, maybe you could have made it work, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's just another chance to do the same thing but go bigger, and it's like, well, you may as well try something different.
Try something different, right? And it's same thing with Back to the Future 2, right? It's that, I mean, they had those conversations. How much of it do we keep? How much? What are the beats we play again? What don't we? I mean, because Back to the Future 2 is like, it's like an algorithmically decided. They went in and tried to come up with an equation for that movie.
Yeah.
This percent new, this percent same, this percent repeat,
Well, it's funny because the original script was almost a repeat of the first movie, where it's like Marty goes back to the 60s when his parents are dating and once again has to get them back together. And, you can understand why that was considered because that does feel like, okay, well, let's take the things people like from the first one. But I love how what we ended up with. I mean, it's a wacky idea, right? Where we do get a whole different plot at the beginning, but that plot screws up the first movie. So you have to fix the first movie. I mean, it's pretty ingenious. And I think how many times in the past 5 years alone have we said, oh, it's like Back to the Future 2. Like so many movies lately have been sort of, inspired by that idea in their sequels.
Yeah. Right.
Avengers Endgame, and remember Happy Death Day 2 even like calls it out like, wow, we're just living Back to the Future 2, like yeah.
I mean, I think that, oh, by the way, the helicopter sequence, I love this.
It's original. It's different.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, I agree. He's got the Gary Kurtz beard going on too, which I was like, when was that ever something that someone like looked at themselves and went, yeah, this'll do.
That's the ticket.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting. Basically, for people who can't see it, it's like it's a beard, but the mustache part is shaved off, so it's just sort of like a chin strap, I guess you'd say.
It's like a Abe Lincoln kind of thing.
Yeah, actually, he really rocked that, didn't he? Lincoln.
Lincoln did. Yeah, I mean,
he really did because I don't think I've seen it on anyone else and thought nice, but Lincoln, I'm like, yeah, no, he looks good.
and by extension, Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, worth mentioning, Siskel and Ebert were not big fans of this movie.
What did they say?
They said, oh, it's just nonsense,
And I can actually appreciate that take on this, but I think with 45 years and seeing what sequels have too often become, I think I can look at this with a historical, appreciation and go, oh, well, at least they tried something different. And I do think, like I said earlier, I think it's good filmmaking, like maybe the characters don't hit like the first one and whatnot, but like it's at least they tried,
Well, and I think that especially during that period, it's, to me, what struck me is like they at that point right away recognized that the first Jaws is this really impressive movie, right?
Uh-huh.
Like that's not a movie that sort of came into its reputation. It pretty much came out and everybody was like, this is one of the greatest movies ever made.
Right.
And that's a reputation that has stuck, which is pretty remarkable when you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that it holds up all these years later, yeah.
I think so, but like a sequence like this, well, we're talking about something different from the first film. There's nothing like that. And yet I love the tension here because as a viewer, you're like, well, something's going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, there's half an hour left. And the way in which to me, this is like, when the T-Rex is about to show up in Jurassic Park, and you're like, turn the light off,
Yeah.
Because the blade starts spinning, whatever, and it's like it's drawn to the rhythmic, right? It's like a sandworm from Dune, basically.
Yeah, the pulses. Yeah.
Well, this is great. Look at that. I mean, the helicopter's pulled under, the blades come off. I mean, it's goddamn terrifying.
Well, and it's cool too because the blades are then now broken and flinging at the kids and ruining their sails. Like it's like the danger of the entire situation is really well realized. Yeah,
I mean, you almost wish like they would have had somebody get taken out by one of those blades.
Or injured or something. Like get like a shrapnel in their leg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. That would have been good. I guess that was a real helicopter pilot too. And and he did the whole stunt with the thing going underwater, and they just gave him an oxygen tank and said a little prayer and said action.
Well, and I love that they came up with this idea, like, oh, we got to have the shark like pull a helicopter underwater.
Yeah.
And then they had to sort of reverse engineer a story reason and a real world application. Like, how would that work? How do we end up with a helicopter getting pulled underwater? You know?
Yeah.
And they did it in a way we're like, no, that tracks, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, the tension's really good because it's compelling. Like, I was wondering what he's going to do. So it's like, oh, well, they attach a rope and he's just going to, he's going to pull them? Interesting. And so you see every step of it, throwing the rope, attaching the rope, turning the key. And it really, and you know something bad's going to happen. So
and I don't know about you, but I'm like, come on. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, let's go.
Now, definitely watching this, with Sean and just this trauma that he's dealing with, I can't help but think of that cute little boy in the first movie and be like, man, that kid's in for some serious therapy, in terms of the character, he's a cute little boy and he's doing the little thing with his hands and stuff. And then you're like, one movie later, he like,
right.
several near-death experiences.
I know. And is he the one that becomes Dennis Quaid?
No, that's Michael.
Okay.
But Sean dies in the fourth one.
Fun.
But again, like I told you, by the fourth one, we're in like the into the Jaws verse because the fourth one ignores the third one.
Oh, geez. I don't know.
So this is not a recent phenomenon of sequels ignoring prior sequels.
Yeah.
It's been going on for a while.
Yeah. Well, and then sadly, my person just died. The person who was nice. I can't keep track of all the names, but yeah, the boy.
I think her name was Marge. Martha Swatek. Actually, I'm curious if she did anything else other than this movie. Just because we're sort of tracking the careers of these Jaws 2 kids.
Yeah.
Well, she's still around. It says, yeah, she's, she occasionally shows up for like the Hollywood show and does, signings and stuff.
Great. Perfect.
Yeah, I'm looking at a thing. It says, this is from 2017. It says Martha Swatek, best known for a role in Jaws 2, will be appearing in person at the Hollywood show. So you can, meet her and get autographs. And I was thinking like, I think that's nice that like, you got this person who, she did this role in this one movie and, 40 years later, people want to come and talk to her about that one movie she did. Like, I think that's nice personally.
I 100% agree. And I feel, I don't know a lot about those shows, but I feel like I'm seeing more of them, or at least noticing more people in my orbit attending them. And I love that. I love that there's this opportunity for these people to, like you say, I mean, they still get to go out and connect with the people.
Real quick. Hold on.
Yeah.
When he's like yelling at him, were you like, dude, relax?
Dude, yes. He's like yelling and swearing at this poor little kid. And I was just like, I sort of get, he's sort of doing like a tough love thing. Like he's trying
exactly.
to like,
you get that later.
Yes. But I was just like, I would not respond to that personally. I'd be like, I don't want to go on the boat with that guy.
He's like, I'm gonna break your ass. It's like he's a little kid, dude.
Yeah, and it's funny because then when the kid gets over there, he's like, "Oh, you're safe now," and he's like kissing his head like Mole Man, And I was just like,
That's right.
I was like, huh?
I had that exact reaction. Anyway, sorry, you were talking about the Hollywood show.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking that last night. But I think the kid's doing a good job, by the way. His acting, it makes sense. I mean, he's traumatized.
Yeah, exactly.
But no. I'm just saying that I love that there's the opportunity for the actors, and it's like nice income. They still get to, profit off of something they did that people still love. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I think I mentioned, a couple of years ago, I was at the Silicon Valley Con, and Tony Dow, who has now passed away, but Tony Dow and Jerry Mathers were there.
Wow. That'd be surreal to me.
Yeah, well, and it was like, there wasn't like a huge line. There were a few people talking to them. And on the one hand, you're like, that's kind of sad that there isn't a big line. But then you're like, well, why would there be, right?
As time marches on, yeah.
Right. But there's still people there, right? So like that was my thought, like just turning it around. It's like, however many decades later, there's still people who are interested to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's lining up to talk to me. I know that,
Sure.
So, I think that's just nice to be able to have that ability,
Yeah. If I met Tony Dow, I'd be like, could you say to me, stop giving me the business?
If I met Tony Dow, I'd be like, can you tell me the secret of overcoming death? That would be my question.
Wait, what?
Because he's gone. He's not around anymore.
Oh, shit. Right. I was like, maybe some B-horror movie he was in or something.
No, I'm like, clearly you've mastered.
Yeah. He always used to say that, like, come on, Beeve, stop giving me the business.
Stop giving me the business, yeah.
I did enjoy this moment, like her little prayer, and we get the kids like this shot here. Then we cut to this wide shot where they're all like, it looks very hopeless.
Yeah,
and just they got this jury rig kind of thing together, and things aren't looking good.
Well, and the whole power juncture island thing, as a plot conceit, I think it's effective, but also just the on a behind the scenes level, the work that went into creating that thing.
Yeah.
It's bananas. I was reading about how, excuse me, like it was like all these different pieces of fabricated material put together, and they had to be anchored to the bottom. And I'm like, what an absolute nightmare, because apparently they didn't anchor it properly, and half of it just started floating out to Cuba or wherever, because this is like Florida where they were shooting all this stuff.
Right.
And I'm like, what a nightmare. Jeez,
Yeah, you would have no idea. I mean, it looks real to me.
Yeah, I think so.
But I mean, just think about the executing all of this. I mean, I think about this. We know how hard it was on Spielberg with the first one, but I mean, you've got all these kids and they're on like 4 or 5 different boats, and they need to be a certain distance from each other, but then they pull themselves toward one another.
Real quick, hold on. This moment here, again, I actually really like this moment where it's, Brody, he's understanding everything that's happened. He knows Sean is there, and how the son is like, I'm sorry, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, it's fine, right? And it's this great like family moment, and it really solidifies the kind of father Brody is.
I'm glad you pointed that out, because that stuck out to me last night too. It's funny, you're pointing out all the things that I remember stopping and thinking about in my mind, because I appreciated that as like a father moment, like you're saying, where it's like,
yeah,
look, we're in the thick of this. There is no point in being like, how dare you sneak out?
Yes, exactly.
Like the kid is apologetic, but he's just like, it's fine. Like, let's go. Like, let's fix this.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Yeah. So again, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, but I mean, just the technical aspect of like all these boats, and they're in the water and they're far apart, so the kids pull them together, but then you go cut and you have to reset it and undo the rope and pull the boats back out a certain distance.
Oh my God.
Get them in the frame of the camera, and you have real waves, knocking you about. I mean, this just feels exhausting executing all this. It's impressive.
I think it is. Yeah. And Zwark has the misfortune of not being Steven Spielberg, and yet I think objectively you say he did a good job of pulling this all together.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, as a whole piece, obviously it's not the masterpiece that the first one is, and it sounded like it was a nightmare to execute even for Spielberg. But in this one, I mean, you really have to admire. I mean, I think it's all the story stuff for me that I'm sort of like hit or miss on, but it's the execution. I think feels like a thought out movie.
I agree with that. Yeah. So the actor who plays that Steven Spielberg looking guy, Keith Gordon is his name, and he went on to become a director.
Oh,
up to and just the last few years, like he's directed episodes of Fargo, the TV show Fargo.
Oh, those are great.
Yeah, Better Call Saul. He did.
Oh,
He did Legion, the TV Homeland. He's directed, so he's doing all right. Keith Gordon.
Oh, so he's got like those are all shows that I would say, you actually think about how great the direction is. So that's amazing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I would love to see a behind the scenes image of this and see how far away from land they are.
Oh, that's a good point.
I mean, they do a good job of, you can point a camera in one direction and see nothing but horizon. And you're like, oh, they're out there in the middle of nowhere. But I mean, how far did they have to be shuttled out? You've got, like you say, you got this fake island out there. Like, how big is the rig beneath it connecting to whatever it's connected to?
Yeah.
Be kind of curious to see all that.
Now, this was all shot off of the coast of Florida versus the first film, which is all off of Martha's Vineyard.
Right.
And so I wonder if that helped in terms of the sort of the topography of the region.
Yeah, I wonder.
I know that they shot this during like winter.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, like they shot through like up to Christmas basically. And so they were like, the actors were putting ice in their mouth so that they wouldn't breathe. Like you couldn't see them breathing the when you breathe out, what do you call it? When you see
just see your breath, yeah.
The frost, seeing the frost coming out of your mouth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a funny trick. My friend who's an AD, she was telling me about that, like shooting shows and late into the night, and they have to put ice cubes in, the actors have to put ice cubes in their mouth for that. That's wild to me. That it's just such a funny lo-fi trick,
Right. So Roy Scheider really liked tanning, didn't he?
Yeah, that's what I hear.
He's got this sort of leathery complexion even back then.
Yeah, I mean, you hear those stories where he's kind of obsessed with it.
That's really funny.
But I saw recently, I mentioned on the show, but I saw The Shark is Broken, this play on Broadway that was written by Ian Shaw.
Turns out the only thing broken is Richard Dreyfuss's heart.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, Robert Shaw's son co-wrote this play based on the diaries or journals that his dad wrote about working on Jaws. And I was going to bring up that there's actually a whole scene dedicated to Roy Scheider, the character of Roy Scheider, like basically stripping down to his like Speedo because he has a minute just so he can tan for a while. And it's like, yeah. But yeah, what you're alluding to is that Richard Dreyfuss attended recently one of the nights and was left heartbroken at the way they portrayed him.
Less than thrilled, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, who knows, by the way, like, there's this side, that side, and the truth,
Yeah, sure.
And I've heard from plenty of people who say that Richard Dreyfuss is in fact a kind of unpleasant person. So, I wouldn't doubt that there's some veracity somewhere.
I'm sure some of it is pretty accurate, but I imagine then all these years later, though, it's not fun to watch.
To be sort of the
performed.
goat of the thing.
Yeah.
to be the goat in the traditional negative sense, not goat in the current positive sense.
right. That's funny.
Yeah, these actors, I mean, this construct, like, it's not actual rock, right? So they were just slipping and sliding all over the place.
Yeah, it's like fiberglass or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, wait, when it shows that injury there, what is it? Is that supposed to be fresh? Or what?
I was wondering about that.
Or it looks like it happened several days ago or a week ago or something. So I was confused.
Okay, so she pretty much starts screaming here and doesn't stop until after the credits end, I think.
Yes. Yeah, she was starting to become grating to me. But I was also appreciating, I mean, truly, like, you're an actor, you do what they want you to do, and you trust that they're going to put all the puzzle pieces together in a way that's the most enjoyable and entertaining. But I feel like they did her a little dirty, where they just like keep cutting back to her just losing her mind.
You have to admit, it's like one take that they just kept intercutting. And so it seems like she's screaming for the whole time.
Yeah. There was one that happened maybe like 5 minutes ago where she screams for like 17 seconds straight. And I was like, no. I mean, you can cut, you can edit that. Like you can cut that in half if you like, like you didn't have to awkwardly hold on her for so long.
As I was watching this, I was sort of fascinated by how fit Roy Scheider's legs are. I was like, those are some toned legs.
Yeah. I mean, well, the shorts he's wearing really shows them off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta respect the hustle there. So this here, so we were talking about like the way they contrived to get rid of the shark, and I was saying I like what they did here because it is extremely different.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of works, but more interesting to me is like the Jaws ride at Universal Florida was based on Jaws 2, not the first Jaws.
I wonder why that is. Is that easier to execute? I mean, they're like, hey, we could
because it specifically it has him electrocuted,
right?
And he's like scarred and stuff.
Huh.
But come on, Brian. I mean, I think this is really cool. The rhythmic thumping of the paddle to draw the shark. I think it's put together really well.
I agree. Yeah. It's good. Like I said, I didn't remember this movie very well, and I was wondering, like, well, they can't put another tank in its mouth. Like,
right?
How are they going to get rid of this? And this is completely different. It's clever. The way that
now that being said, open up and say ah is not quite the bone mow that Smiley son of a bitch is,
That's true.
Granted, I don't want him saying that again either, but
yeah.
But this it's a little bit like in Die Hard 2 if McClane is like, it's howdy doody time. Like it's a
yes.
With each movie, he's got a different, like Homer, this is 60 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's the thing, too, though, is it started to get ridiculous with McClane, where he just kept saying the same thing.
That's right.
Over at each movie, But yeah, I agree. They should have maybe done a couple alts.
Yeah. Open up and say, that doesn't really work for me.
Yeah. Don't forget to floss as he sticks the cable in his mouth,
I just took a sip of water right when you said that.
Sorry.
Yeah, Roy Scheider, I mean, he passed away, like 2007, I think? And it's like a real shame because I feel like by the end of his career, he wasn't making as many appearances. He kind of, I don't know why, but it just felt like we weren't seeing him on screen as much anymore.
Yeah, and it feels like that should have, well, if he was in the golden age of television era, like he would have had been on some series and,
Yeah, that's right.
Older wizened Scheider. I can totally see that.
It's just, his face is so iconic to me,
Mm-hmm.
I've said about Roy Scheider, like Roy Scheider looks like the Mad Magazine drawing of Roy Scheider.
That's really funny. Yeah, it's so distinct.
Yeah, like, because the Mad Magazine caricatures like slightly exaggerate, whatever. It's like, no, that's just what he looks like.
Yeah.
That's
and it's really funny.
Yeah, He looks like a Mort Drucker drawing. You know?
That's so funny.
You Claude.
Well,
that'll leave a mark.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a pretty sensational ending. I like it. I think it's good. You gotta do something different with the sequel. It's got to be a little bigger.
See, I think this should have been the fake out death where they think they're safe and then the shark comes out of the water with a machine gun. And they're like, no, you know, and then Carl Winslow kills him. I don't know, something he figured out.
Yes, right.
have the script doctors take a look at that.
Yeah. That's good. But yeah, no, I mean, it's funny. It's like a combination of like bad 70s visual effects and also kind of cool practical effects. Like you get this sort of funny...
When they kill the shark, you mean?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like the sort of weird cartoonish looking like...
Yes, the electricity and stuff.
Electricity or whatever. But then also, you get the flames coming out of it and you can see like steam coming out of its eyes. Like it looks cool.
I think they figured out the right way to cut that sequence together.
Yes.
That the stuff that's slightly dodgy, you never focus on it too long.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of a funny impressionistic sort of thing too, where it's cutting like, right, if I remember right, like intercutting between Scheider and the shark very fast for a second there. Like
that's right. Yeah.
Cutting to both sides, back and forth. I felt like this was a little bit of an abrupt ending. Like we don't even get
thought.
Yeah. Well, we get like in the first one, even just sort of like I used to hate the water, just like a little something to go out with. And here, I just maybe like a line or something. Like it just sort of like the shark is dead, and then the credits start, and we see him rescuing the kids.
We get the little piece with Sean where Sean's like, they made me go with them, and he's like, yeah, sure they did, ha ha ha.
Yeah, sure.
And that's meant to be like kind of the thing that deflates the tension.
Yeah, I think maybe if he had been like, who was the one who wouldn't stop screaming? And they're like, this one. He's like, you go last. And then directed by, like something like that,
Credits.
We can workshop that, but along those lines.
That's really funny. Well, this was Jaws 2. What's your first of all, let me just say, thank goodness nothing else came after this movie, because you got like two really solid movies with
100%. I agree.
No one would deign to make a third or much less a fourth one.
Right. Yeah, no, but I would say, as someone who was sort of hesitant to ever feel the need to even visit this one, much like my experience with Psycho 2, like, look, it ain't Jaws 1, but I think it's worth checking out. I mean, it's just a little more time in that world and a little more time with Brody, and there's some good stuff in it, and it doesn't threaten your love of the first one. Like, I think it's worth checking out if you haven't.
Yeah, I think sometimes I've said this before, right? So much of the discourse around films is either best ever or worst ever.
Yes,
and sometimes it's okay to just be like, no, it's okay. I think Jurassic Park 3 is okay.
Yeah. Well, and our friend Paul Spatero, he's got his podcast, Is It Jaws?
Yes.
And I love that. Right. He uses that as a rating system. Like he looks at other films and he says, is it Jaws 1? Is it like a masterpiece? Is it Jaws 2? Not bad. Is it Jaws 3 or is it Jaws 4? And I think this Jaws 2 is perfectly Jaws 2.
There you go. And unlike the film, which didn't know quite the last line to end on, I think you found the perfect line to end on. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you, everybody, for listening to our Jaws 2 commentary track. And as always, hey, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this film. and what your relationship is to it, because certainly there are plenty of vigorous defenders of this film and people who vociferously hate it. So I'd love to hear from both. But if you want to let us know what you think, you can email us at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit like on our Facebook page, facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast, and message us there. As always, if you like what we're doing, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review, leave a star rating, let people know, because that is what will help drive the traffic, and that'll be kind of a nice thing. If you're looking for me online, you can find me on social media at Zacky's Corner. That's ZAKIS Corner. I'm on Instagram and it used to be Twitter, everything else. Brian is out and about doing stuff. He lives his life offline. I don't know if he's living his life 1 mile at a time.
Apparently, yeah, in this day and age. But but you can catch my writing, Puppy Dog Pals, Young Jedi Adventures out there in the Disney channels and the Disney Pluses of it all.
Well, there we go. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been our movie film commentary track for Jaws 2. We will catch you next time.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
The holidays start here at Baker's with a variety of options to celebrate traditions old and new. Whether you're making a traditional roasted turkey or spicy turkey tacos, your go-to shrimp cocktail, or your first Cajun risotto, Baker's has all the freshest ingredients to embrace your traditions. Baker's, fresh for everyone.
Choose from a great selection of digital coupons and use them up to 5 times in one transaction. Check our app for details. Baker's, fresh for everyone.